So Darth Vader's personal fleet of Star Destroyers is meant to be one of the most imposing naval forces in galactic history. But they're actually smaller than you think. Today we'll take a look at Death Squadron, their ships, their history, and their fate at the end of the war. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So Death Squadron makes its grand appearance right before the Battle of Hoth in The Empire Strikes Back. Death Squadron then spends most of that movie pursuing the rebel forces. And the movie makes it seem like it's some ludicrous number of Star Destroyers, but it's actually much smaller. So Death Squadron is led by the Executor, a 19-kilometer-long Executor-Class Star Dreadnought. These were, at the time, some of the largest capital ships ever built, and many considered assaulting one of these ships to be basically impossible. It served as Vader's personal flagship when he was commanding Death Squadron. Supporting it were 5 Imperial-Class Star Destroyers. That's right, only 5. And we know the names of 3. The Avenger, which pursues the Millennium Falcon into the asteroid field. The Tyrant, which takes an ion cannon to the face during the blockade of Hoth. And the Devastator, which served as Vader's flagship before the Executor was finished. The Devastator is actually the Star Destroyer that we see at the beginning of A New Hope and at the end of Rogue One. Now, while Death Squadron proper consisted of only 5 Star Destroyers and the Executor, they were, on many occasions, assisted by other Star Destroyers of regional fleets. Hence why in some of the shots it does look larger than just 5 Star Destroyers and a Dreadnought. On top of that, there were quite a few smaller support ships, including Arquitens-class light cruisers and Gazantes. So Death Squadron was formed following the Battle of Yavin as a direct response to the threat from the Rebel Alliance. It was assembled with the express objective of hunting down rebel forces that had escaped the moons of Yavin. Some of the first attacks they carried out were attempting to disable rebel shipbuilding. The first use of Death Squadron that we know about was an assault on Mako Ta, a shipyard owned by the Rebel Alliance. They would then spend a good portion of time trying to hunt down rebel leadership. It is during this period that they found the rebel base on Hoth. A probe droid launched from the Imperial-Class Star Destroyer, the Stalker, had discovered signs of the Rebel Alliance on the icy, sort of frozen backwater planet. Imperial forces then proceeded to blockade the world, and sent the 501st to carry out a ground assault against the rebel installation there. By the way, it brings me to the 501st. Now, while the 501st deserves to have a video on its own, it is worth mentioning here because they were the primary ground forces deployed by Death Squadron. The 501st, at least in Legends, had the nickname of Vader's Fist, and it's unsurprising that they operated basically exclusively out of Vader's personal fleet. Now, we all know how the Battle of Hoth ends. The Empire manages to take Echo Base, but a large portion of the Rebel Alliance escapes thanks to their ion cannon. Death Squadron then begins the tedious process of hunting down the escaped rebel ships, specifically focusing on the Millennium Falcon. Since it didn't have a hyperdrive, it wasn't able to flee the Hoth system. And while most of the other rebel ships were able to slip away before the Empire could really react, the Millennium Falcon was more or less stuck. And thus, Death Squadron deployed some of its Star Destroyers to pursue the Millennium Falcon through the asteroid fields in the Hoth system. Death Squadron would then make their way to Cloud City, where they would play a key role in the Empire sort of taking over Cloud City, really. And that's where we see them at the end of Empire Strikes Back. But they are the force that drops off Vader at the start of Return of the Jedi. We know that shortly before the Battle of Endor, Death Squadron was responsible for guarding the space around the battle station. When the Battle of Endor took place, the Imperial fleet sent to ambush the rebel forces were led by Death Squadron, and the Executor actually served as the flagship of Imperial forces during that battle. Now, as we all know, the Executor doesn't survive the Battle of Endor. Having been destroyed by a wayward A-Wing, it crashes into the Death Star. So with the loss of the Executor, which had a lot of their key naval officers on board, as well as the death of Darth Vader, Death Squadron didn't really have much leadership coming out of the Battle of Endor. And with different factions vying for control over what's left of the Imperial military, shortly after the Battle of Endor, Death Squadron simply dissolves. Heading their own separate ways, they end up scattered to the wind, their ships in the service of various Imperial warlords. But as I mentioned, that's not really a ton of ships, that's basically 5 Star Destroyers at that point, lacking the Executor. But are they Star Destroyers? If you want to learn more about what class of ship a Star Destroyer actually is, I'll leave a link up here to my video on why Imperial ship classifications make absolutely no sense. And I want you to let me know down below how you feel about Death Squadron being so small. Do you feel like it should have been more ships, or do you think 5 Star Destroyers is sort of a realistically small force? After all, much of the galaxy considers a single Imperial Star Destroyer to be an unassailable fortress. And lastly, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.